All right, y'all, what's up? What's up, teammates? By the way, I am in Newcastle, Oklahoma. If you get a chance to head out to the Red, White, and Blue Fest at Veterans Park, my team is out there playing some really awesome games. It's all for free, free prizes and everything. So go out there and have some fun. But, teammates, I want to talk about generational curses. Like, I think there's a lot of us out there that are trying to break generational curses, right? And it might not be easy, but I feel like it's important. And I want you to feel supported in trying to break whatever generational curses that you have. And I think this is something we have to think about, me as working with kids and a teacher, and also as a parent. I think these things are kind of important because this isn't always the case, because there's a lot of people always trying to break their generational curses. But psychology tells us that people who were raised expected to know things they didn't know and yelled at for not knowing things they didn't know tend to become people who also expect others to know certain things and get mad or yell at them if they don't know them. For example, I recently did a post. Thought this post was really awesome. It was very interesting. I noticed a lot of people talking about common sense on one of my posts, and so for fun, a few weeks back, I made a post that said, hey, define common sense for me. Define it for me, how you see it, and give me an example of what you think common sense is. And a lot of the answers were enlightening, right? Because a lot of things that someone might think are common, when you step back and look at people as a big picture, it may not be so common. For example, I was raised by a mechanic. I worked in the collision repair industry for a while. So I came up learning about tools, and so many of the people that I worked with, if they asked somebody for a tool and that person didn't know what that tool was and couldn't get the right tool and hand it to them, it would be what's wrong with you? What a ratchet wrench? That's just common sense to know what one of those are. Now, it's common sense for people that grew up in that world. It's not common sense for someone who's never used a ratchet wrench before, right? And I found it interesting. I had a lot of good answers, and most of the answers related to something that should be relatively common knowledge, such as we learned early on, such as, oh, that's hot, don't touch it, things like that. But it led me to remember, though, that generational curses are often us just carrying forward some kind of baggage that we had at some point in our life. So someone who is yelled at and expected to know things they were never taught tends to become someone who goes, oh, it's common sense, you should know that, even though it's something they never taught their own kid. People who were raised with fear being used against them will sometimes and often grow up to be somebody that tries to use other people's fears against them. Someone who was raised with fear as a tool to control them, such as intimidation and all that. And I've got other podcasts to talk about physical discipline and things like that, which tends to just, create liars or other people that use fear, right? Because if you use the fear of physical discipline as a way to control a child's behavior, they very often become the type of person who will also use physical means to control somebody else's behavior that they don't like, and oftentimes tie it to love because the people they love the most did that, right? Ripped your tooth out. Yeah, don't do that. Teeth are supposed to stay in your mouth. But yeah, so people who had fear used as a tool to control them will often grow to be people who use fear as a tool to control others. People raised in homes where abuse was used to control them, whether physical or mental, tend to use those tactics to control others. Someone raised being told things they didn't know were common sense will often do the same to others when they're older, right? And I had one more. Those who are raised being yelled at for small mistakes will often turn around and be people who yell at others for their own small mistakes. And this all perpetuates this cycle of idea that you're not allowed to mess up. I mean, think about it. If you got yelled at as a kid every time you mess up, you probably grew up to be a little bit anxious, and you might find yourself also yelling at other people when they make small mistakes. Or maybe you decided to break that curse, and so you treat people differently. And that's something that I wanted to talk about here, is breaking generational curses. But first, I want to also say generational curses can work backward too. They can work for positive things too. So for example, being raised by someone not afraid to apologize and take responsibility for something they did wrong often translates to another person or their child being not afraid to take responsibility as they get older. So this works on positive stuff too. Someone who was raised by someone who's often calm and supportive tends to be more calm and supportive as they grow up. They tend to emulate the things that they enjoyed about their younger life, but we tend to want to break things that we didn't like, even though sometimes we go ahead and like perpetuate them. We see this generationally too. Like you see a lot of people of like the older living generations right now, oh, just live within your means, just get a better job, get a better education, which is tone deaf to the people trying to do it. Oh my gosh, a better education is going to cost me $100,000 in predatory loans, and getting a better job is not so easy in this area or location, even if I have the skills, right? Oh, we should just save to buy a house. The medium house cost in this state is like $450,000 right now. Just a hand like 10 or 15 years ago, it was like 180,000, 220,000, something along those lines. Like it's doubled in the past decade. Anyway, I'm getting off topic, right? So I understand that all these examples I give sound pretty black and white, and we all know that reality is far different than that. So what we have to understand is that these habits we have are built across all of our relationships and experience. So you could be like a supportive and calm style of parent, but maybe your child at school gets bullied like brutally in a physical way, and how they end up later could end up becoming a mix of all the interactions they had, right? So a person could have supportive, loving parents, get bullied hard for small mistakes at school, and still end up someone who bullies others for their small mistakes. Maybe not. Like I said, everything's different. If you have a question, just throw it out there. Yeah, you got a question, cool potato. Just throw it out there. I'm not saying I'll be able to answer it, but I'm happy to try. But what I do want to say is growing up and becoming mature to me means learning to recognize these patterns of behavior in myself and breaking the cycles by making daily decisions through a different lens. Like we all have to understand that making a big change in our life or breaking a generational curse is not about a one-time decision of, oh, I'm going to break this curse. It's about making our decisions through that constant lens of, okay, I was yelled at as a kid for not knowing things I was never shown. So if I ask my child to do something and they act like they don't know what's going on, I'm going to be patient and I'm going to explain that. So then every time I have the opportunity to interact with my child, right, I'm going to make sure I'm doing it from a place of calm guidance where I want to teach them. So that would be like how to break that particular curse. Why do us cats need just one type of food? Because like cat food ain't enough, man. Yeah, man. No, I've always thought that. Like I have a thing with animals. I'm very much a nature lover, very much an animal lover, conservationalist, that sort of thing. And I've always kind of felt that way about cat food and dog food. So I always keep like 3 different kinds, 3 different things, so that they can have a little bit of a mix in their diet. Interesting question when we're talking about breaking generational curses. But growing up and maturing, to me, is learning to become more self-aware and critical thinking about ourselves. So whenever we have a moment of frustration or we yell or something like that, taking some time to ourselves, ask ourselves the hard question: why did I react like that? Why did this trigger me that bad? Why did this upset me so much? How could I have handled this better? Taking 10 minutes to do that, and then going and taking responsibility. The amount of times I've apologized to my child, and by the way, taking responsibility isn't just about apologizing and saying, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have acted that way. It's like taking time to yourself, ask those hard questions, then come back and be like, I really do apologize. I should not have treated you like that. I understand I treated you like crap about this. I yelled at you for not knowing something you didn't know how to do. That's unfair. Here, let me teach you how to do it now. Let me walk you through it. And honestly, when we're talking about teaching our kids, we should be willing to walk them through as many times as it takes, to teach them as many times as it takes. I had one impatient parent in my life who would show me something once, and then 6 months later, I'd be expected to remember it. But we have to remember, our brains are still developing all the way up to the ages between like 22 and 25. Our brains are still developing. And so we often have to be taught things, especially complex things, multiple times or have multiple experiences with it before it finally like actually sets into the brain. So you can't expect showing your kid how to, the 5 steps to do whatever it is one time and expect them to remember that 3 months later or even a week later, right? Without having to be walked through it again. So I kind of came up, and when I had my son, I was like, I'm not going to do that. I don't care how many times I've explained or shown him how to do something. I'm going to continue to do so until he's able to get it and feels good about doing it on his own. I'm not going to yell at him about it. I mean, there were times I did when he was younger, and I had to make that decision to change. I had to make that decision to change the way I approach those things. And like I say, it's not about one decision. It's about deciding to do it different every time you have the opportunity come up in front of yourself, right? Like I said, though, the world's not black and white. You could emulate all the right things and not do all the wrong things, but you're only, as a parent, you're only one relationship that your child has. If they go to public school, they have friends, they have classmates, they have teachers, they have other people, and how people, what the tactics people use to control them or get to know them or influence them or things like that in those scenarios also can play a factor in someone's later life behavior, right? So I wanted to bring that up. I'm not blaming parents if you're having an issue with your teen in a certain way, your child in a certain way. I'm not blaming parents. It's cumulative of all of our experiences across all of our relationships. And I just did a post about this earlier. As parents, it is not our job to protect our kids from the world until they turn 18 and then throw them out into it. So many parents do that in these generations. I've had so many students just get kicked out at 18 with no real idea how to go about getting a loan or setting up bills or going to college or the recruitment process or like anything. So then they come to me and are like, hey, I don't know how to wash my clothes at a laundromat. I don't know how to do this kind of stuff. A lot of them come to me because they know I used to be homeless, and I have no problem teaching somebody how to walk through those kind of things, right? But parenting isn't about that. Parenting is about guiding kids and teens to become responsible, capable, independent, critical thinkers that are kind and compassionate and patient with others, and guiding them in how to navigate the world, not hiding them from the world and then sending them out into it, but slowly teaching them and guiding them how to navigate the world successfully, right? And I think a lot of parents just look at, well, all I have to do is keep you safe, keep you fed, and all that, and then you're gone at 18. But we never really guide them to be great humans. We never really guide them to be able to be independent, to be able to critically think about themselves, to be able to be self-aware about their emotions. So one of the things I work with my son all the time, and I would encourage other people to do too, look, he crashed out the other day, right, over a video game, which is always kind of a trigger for me. And I did the normal stuff. Hey man, calm down, it ain't worth it, it's just a video game, step away, this, that, and the other. And then I realized this is my moment. This is my moment to teach my son the proper way to do this type of thing. And so, it became calmly, hey man, you're getting frustrated. You're getting really irate. And I know right now, this thing that's happening feels like everything. It feels really big, but we need to take a step away for about 10 minutes. Let's go outside. So we go outside and I start asking about other things. What do you think about those clouds? Isn't that really pretty sunset? Blah, 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 blah. Get them distracted, calm down. And they're like, all right, now a video game. Is it really all that important to have that kind of reaction over? Well, no. If you were playing with somebody and they had that kind of reaction, would you want to hang out with them for much longer? Well, no. All right, so it's time to ask ourselves the important questions. Why was I frustrated? Why was I so triggered? And how could I have avoided that? Well, maybe when I started getting frustrated, I could have walked away sooner before it turned into it. Yeah, exactly. So we're guiding our kids and teens, mine's a teen, in how to navigate the world in an appropriate way. But a big part of that is learning a little bit of self-awareness. And self-awareness doesn't come from just knowing yourself. It comes from actual self-exploration. Oh, this thing got said and it made me feel some kind of way. Let me go spend 10, 20, 30 minutes on my own, not doing anything else, but asking myself, why did this bother me? Why did this trigger me? Why is this such a big deal to me? Why am I so passionate about this? Why did I act so rudely? Why was my first instinct to yell? Why was my first instinct to insult, right? And then how should I approach it? How should I do it better? And then go back into that situation with a much, much better mind frame. To me, that's what maturity is about. But we have to guide our kids to become more and more mature as time goes on, rather than just trying to protect them from all the things that can happen. Instead, we need to teach them how to navigate all the things that can happen, rather than end up with them in a situation. Because the thing is often we want to protect our kids, so we hide them from so many things. And then something gets brought up, something happens when they're at school at the age of 9, 10, 12, 15, whatever, something happens and they're faced with a situation that they don't know how to navigate because it's a topic that's always been kind of avoided or ran away from by the parent who's trying to protect them from what real world things can be. So then their experience of this thing in the real world comes from a different source, peer pressure, bullying, whatever it might be, right? And they might not know how to navigate the situation and then might fall into bad behavior or do something really stupid or something like that. But it's because no one ever explained to him to them that these things can happen, how to navigate these things, why to make the right decision, why it's the right decision to make, and that sort of thing, right? But big changes don't happen through big decisions. Big changes happen through making all of our small daily decisions through a different lens, right? People like to say common sense ain't so common. Here's the thing. In my mind, common sense is supposed to be things that are experience-based learning that we all have in common from the time we're a young age. Don't touch the burner on the stove, it's hot. Don't stick your hand in the fire, it's hot. If you go outside, you're going to get wet. Blah, 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 right? Very easy things. But so many people like to go crazy with the common sense thing. Like I had this martial arts teacher once, shows me, I don't remember what he showed me, showed me some kind of technique, and then was like, do it. And then I was struggling with it, and they were just like, come on, it's an easy technique, it's common sense, rotate your hips. Okay, rotating my hips wasn't common sense to me at that time, right? Common sense to them because they've been in the martial arts world, so most of the people they interact with are martial artists who already know. But this was someone not experienced in teaching, and I was a beginner. So I come in, I don't already know, because to me it's not common sense. Most of the people I know don't know this. And so we have to understand that too many of us use the term common sense to mean something that seems like common sense to us because we know a lot about it. But when we back up and look at the whole of society, not everybody knows what a box-end wrench is. Not everyone was raised knowing what a ratchet wrench is. Not everyone was raised knowing how to throw a round kick. You know what I mean? And so we have to learn to break these things down. So as parents, we always have to be willing, no matter how simple the thing seems to us, we always have to be willing to break it down and teach it to our kids. Yes, this includes taking your 12-year-old and walking them there step by step how to scrub dishes, rinse dishes, put them in the dishwasher, clean the sink, turn on the dishwasher, unload the dishwasher, blah, 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 and take them through calmly, step by step, as many times as it takes, to the point that they start going, I know how to do it. All right, then do it. I will explain it until I get I know what I'm doing. Okay, do it. And then we go, right? Okay, so from now on, I'm not going to explain it to you anymore, right? And like I said, parenting, too many people approach parenting as a protect the kids from the world and then send them out into the world. When my son was born, I decided to take a different tact on parenting because look, my dad was pretty cool, but I didn't know much about him until I was 13, so I can't really go off of that other than my teen years. But I tell you what, I learned a lot in my preteen years about how not to parent. And so I knew I wanted to do parenting differently. I wanted to break generational curses. So I started looking at the curses I wanted to break, but there were so many. I was like, that's a lot to remember. And then I realized that, if I just changed my mindset and the way I look at parenting and define what I think good parenting is, because all of us are going to have a slightly different definition there, mind you. We all have a slightly different definition of what a good person is. We all have a slightly different definition of lots of things, and we need to understand that. We need to realize that people's definitions of things are different. So I decided to define parenting for myself when my kid was born, and what I landed on was it's not about hiding them from the world. It's about guiding them to navigate the world in a safe and responsible way, guiding them to be self-aware, guiding them to critical thinking. So I do my best to not tell my son how to think or what to think on any particular topic. I will give my opinion, which might be influential, it might not. I will give my opinion, but what I do is then get him to express an opinion, and then I'll ask questions. Why do you have that opinion? What backs up that opinion to you? How would you feel if I give this other example related to your opinion? Do you still see it the same way? Because to my mind, if an opinion can't be carried across to more than one anecdote or metaphor, then maybe the opinion has flaws, right? I feel like a strong opinion is something that can be carried across many anecdotes. And I know that's the one thing I will say my mother did well, and I try to do well as well, was she definitely raised me to be a critical thinker. She definitely raised me to question my own thoughts and ideas. She raised me by questioning my own thoughts and ideas and putting me in a position to give me a chance to defend my opinion, to defend my thought, to defend my idea, and then also give me the devil's advocate type, well, what if someone says this, other side of the coin type thing. That taught me how to approach relationships or topics or opinions from multiple points of view. So if I get to a point that I have an opinion enough that I'm comfortable expressing it, you can guarantee I can defend that opinion from several points of view. I can even argue against my own opinion and then explain why I feel like those arguments don't overshadow the opinion itself, right? And so that was something my mom did well. And so I try to emulate that a little bit in asking the hard questions. Too many parents run away from the question why. Why is a great question to ask and something we should be talking to our kids about all the time. Not only asking them why, but being willing to explain our why. Now, I might always not be able to do it in the moment. They might say, why? And I go, all right, well, I don't have time to explain that right now. But when we get home tonight, I will explain to you why. And I might not even have a good answer. So I spend the rest of that time coming up with a good answer as to why. And if I can't come up with one, I'll just say, look, I didn't have a good reason. I acted out in the moment and it wasn't appropriate, right? So it's not just about talking about the behaviors either. It's about modeling the behavior. If I want my child to take responsibility when they make a mistake, to apologize and make it up, then I can't just tell them, you made a mistake, you're in trouble, you're going to make it up to me, I'm going to punish you, blah, 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 blah. That doesn't teach them anything other than when someone else makes a mistake, I get to punish them. So when they make any small mistake and you get to punish them for it, they kind of end up going, oh, if someone else makes a mistake, I get to punish them. Instead, we want to model a behavior that is going to be a good adult human being. So I might instead, when I make a mistake, be willing to apologize, explain it, and make it up. And then the more I'm willing to do that, the more that becomes the normalized behavior that they're going to want to try to do as well. Oh, sorry, Brittany, I missed your comment there. Breaking things down into smaller kills makes it easier to learn than the big skill. Exactly right. And I have approached everything I've ever done with my son about this, from martial arts to fishing to math. You have to break it down into the tiniest piece possible. And if you've done that and are still struggling with that piece, look at how you can break it down even farther, right? So if we're talking a young kid, like 4 or 5 years old, and they want to help wash dishes, give them one singular task. Okay, your job is to take the dishes I rinsed and washed and put them in the dishwasher. Or your job is to scrub the dish and put it here, and I will, et cetera, right? Break it down into the small steps. But this also is all about creating a relationship with your kid where they feel comfortable to tell you and talk to you about anything without fear of punishment or judgment, right? I wanted to make sure that by the time my child was a teen, which they are now, that they would feel comfortable bringing up anything and everything to me, no matter how bad it sounds, no matter how crazy it is, whatever it is, because I can't guide them if they're not willing to talk to me about the sticky situations that they find themselves in. And so when he was very young, I was like, well, I wanted to be able to do that so I wouldn't get onto him or punish him for expressing something or saying something that was inappropriate. Instead, I would pull him aside and be like, hey, we're not supposed to say that in this company. There's times to say it, there's times not to say it. This is one of those times not to say it. And until you can learn the difference, I would appreciate you not saying that at all until you're old enough to learn the difference when it's okay to say something like that, when it's not okay to say something like that, right? Which I know sounds complicated for a 6 or 7 year old, but most of them just go, okay, and then they just don't say it again. And then as they get older, it kind of comes back around and they mature into it, right? So just to recap what we've been talking about, breaking generational curses. We all have them. Look, the best thing you can do as a parent is to fix the mistakes your parents made, but guess what? You're going to make a whole new set of mistakes. Just like your parents maybe fixed some of generational curses from their parents, but then made their own mistake. For example, I was talking to another gentleman my age just a week ago, and he was saying that he found out that the way his mom was raised was that the parents were never home. She was the oldest. She was expected to take care of her siblings. She was expected to take care of the household. She was expected to be independent, this, that, and the other. And she grew up resenting her parents for it. So she wanted to change that with her kids. But she ended up going too far the other direction and becoming a bit of a helicopter parent. And then he grew up resenting her for that, right? So these things kind of cycle. And the only way that we start truly breaking cycles is when we realize that no extreme one way is ever going to be the right answer. The world is not black and white. The world is nuanced, very, very nuanced and colorful. And we need to approach each new thing with that in mind. So there's a philosophy in my martial arts style that I really, really love that represents the concept that the goal is balance in all things. Because if everything in your life, and I've known people like this, if everything in your life has been good, everything was kind of handed to you, you very quickly were able to become independent, you had plenty of money for whatever reason, parents gave you, blah, 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 all of these good things came in line, then things that you're going to think are bad are based on your baseline. So if only good things happen to you, lucky things, great things happen to you, then something you see as bad, right? A bad thing, someone who grew up like I did might see as an awesome thing, right? So it becomes about perspective and balance. Someone who was raised like, I don't know, like me, abusive households, abusive relationships, homeless at 16, that kind of thing, right? So I have a different baseline of what I consider bad versus what I consider good. And so that's what I mean about we're all in a different position, and we have to understand that when we're talking to somebody or getting into their perspective. But I always believed in, balance in all things. There's a time for some things and a time when it's not appropriate. Time for other things and a time when it's not appropriate. It's not so clear as this is right and this is wrong a lot of the time, right? So again, generational curses tend to come from us copying things that happen to us. Breaking generational curses means deciding to do it different when it's our turn. So generational curses would work like this. Someone who was raised expected to know things and yelled at if they didn't know them will often become someone who expects other people to know things even if there's no real reason for that person to know it. People that were raised with fear used as a tool to control them will often become people who think, oh, I'll use fear as a tool to control others. Now, how many times if you're my generation, how many times, and this is, turns out they were right, but how many times when we were kids did people say, oh, well, they're only bullying you because they probably have low self-esteem, probably have a crappy home life, they probably have someone who talks to them like that at home. And then we grew up to realize, oh my gosh, that was the case for a lot of the bullies in school, because I know one of my first bullies when I was young rode the same bus as me, and then one day I fought back. I told this story on a podcast before. One day I fought back, kicked him right in the groin. That evening on the way home on the bus, he wanted to sit next to me. And actually what he wanted to talk to me about was asking me to help him with something at his house, if I could get off the bus at his house and help him with something, because we only lived like a quarter mile apart, half mile apart. It was walking distance. And then when I actually spent time at his house, I found out that he had to care for both of his sick and elderly grandparents who were very, very mean and a bit on the abusive side, verbally mostly, but a little bit physically. And then I kind of understood where their behavior came from. When he was at home, they used fear and physical stuff to control his behavior. So when he got to school and wanted to control someone else's behavior, he used the same thing. We had conversations about that a lot. He ended up growing up to be a really cool guy. Like I don't talk to him much anymore. We don't live near each other anymore. But turns out a lot of that was true. Well, they're using fear. Fear is being used as a tool against them. Fear of abuse is being used as a tool against them. So then they will use that tool against others because it's the only tool they've ever been taught manages the behavior of the people around them. So we need to teach our kids that there are lots of ways to help manage and influence behavior of people around us, setting boundaries, setting healthy boundaries, and then how to pursue that. And I'm in the martial arts world all the way up through, physical self-defense. So, someone being raised being told things they didn't know were common sense will often do the same the others ago. People who want to break generational curses recognize that these things are healthy, they recognize that there needs to be a balance, and they recognize that they're going to do something different. However, choosing to do something different doesn't mean you should run to the other extreme. Balance in all things, right? Because the world is nuanced. We have to look. I understand why we all look at things as black and white, because it's easy. It's lazy thinking that makes easy decision making, right? Our brains want to save time. So we often make decisions based on what the largest of the social people we see, or in other words, echo chamber algorithms or whatever, we tend to choose whatever other people choose because that's a shortcut our brain automatically does is to make decisions, is shortcuts to what we see the most in society, which with social media becomes echo chambers and stuff like that. So I get it, but that's not critical thinking, that's lazy decision making. You know what I'm saying? And so learning to think critically, I feel like, is an important topic. So seeing things in black and white is actually just a trick of our brain to make decision making easier because we're being lazy about our decision making. If we see something as one or the other, we're being lazy about our decision making and we're not seeing the nuance of things in between. And I think it's important to look at the world, the vibrant, beautiful, crazy, sometimes awful world that we live in for what it is, rather than breaking everything into this or that black and white, right? There's a lot of nuance to things. So this is also why I don't like stereotypes. Sure, are there people out there that fit stereotypes? Absolutely. At the same time, people will tend to use stereotypes to automatically lump people into these groups and make assumptions about them based on what they understand of the stereotype, which is often incorrect or based in hype or propaganda or whatever else, because we have a thriving propaganda system here in this country. And so they'll hear one opinion of someone else and automatically stereotype them and assume all these other things about them without actually getting to know that people are often nuanced on different types of situations, right? So breaking generational curses is about a daily decision to make decisions about how we work with our kids through a different lens than the one we were given. Are we going to make mistakes? Yes. That's okay, as long as the mistakes we make with our kids didn't mess them up as much as the mistakes our parents made with us messed us up. But the only way to get to this is self-awareness in ourselves. Ask ourselves why we feel certain ways, why we get triggered, this, that, and the other, and then guide your kids, aged probably 9 and up, how to do the same thing. And when your teen snaps at you, remember, it's not always about you or what you said. They might be emotionally exhausted because they're not recognizing their own social media patterns, their own emotional patterns. And those times, instead of yelling at them for being disrespectful or snapping at them, maybe give them the, hey man, I love you. I'm concerned about you because for some reason you really came at me on that. I really just kind of was asking for a small thing. It's not that big of a deal. Is something bothering you? Do we need to work through something? No, I don't know why I'm frustrated. Okay, well, what have you been doing for the past 20 minutes? Oh, scrolling social media? You do know that every video gives you a different emotion, right? So you think you're resting, but in the end, you're actually becoming emotionally exhausted, and that emotional exhaustion is the reason you're snapping at me. And I don't blame you. We all crash out sometimes. But can you take 5 minutes? No phone, no social media, no computer, no nothing. Just take 5 minutes, sit and listen to some music, and then I'm going to ask you to do the dishes again when you're more ready. Cool? Go in your room. I set a 5-minute timer. All right, dude, now can you help me do the dishes? Yes. Okay, cool, right? That's helping kids, guiding kids how to handle themselves. So I've been talking long enough. Until I see you guys again, be the best teammates you can be. Oh, watch out for some gaming streams on YouTube. I might do some gaming streams, either Rocket League, or I recently started playing Lost Soul Aside because I finished Expedition 33. That was an amazing game, by the way, for someone who grew up on my generation on Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9. A lot of fun. I will be doing some gaming streams on YouTube too. So if you are interested in these kind of podcast style things, look for the Teammate Talks live shows. I'm going to try to do more of them. If you're interested in gaming streams or just sit and watch me play games, having a conversation with me, because I'm not going to have topics during those, check out different ones. I'll do some solo games, but I'll also do some with my son. So we'll do Rocket League, Fortnite. We've been playing one of the remakes of Lords of the Fallen recently too, which is a Souls-like game. So look out for those. Check us out. Make sure you share, comment on these videos. I always love to have conversations with y'all. Until I see you guys again, be the best teammates you can be. Be the best at being you.